Katie Ransey worked as a Russian translator and then became a teacher. She taught for 15 years before deciding to take a break. During her break, she wrote and published her first book and started a company that prioritizes personal growth and development with lifestyle design. Welcome to 12 Days of Career Breaks. I'm Roshida Dowe of SHIDA's on the Loose.
And I'm Stephanie Perry of Vicarious.com. We're interviewing 12 Black women who took time off work to travel. We're talking about making big changes and redefining their priorities in meaningful ways. Please make sure that you subscribe to our channel, subscribe to the channel that you're watching, and turn on the notifications so that you'll be notified when we post the next video. Also, make sure that you stick around to the end of this video because Roshida and I will be sharing resources that we've created to help get you from the dreaming phase into the planning phase. Kenya, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
Thank you for being here. We're going to have a great conversation today. We're starting things off with a little bit of an icebreaker. We are sponsored by a trivia game called House Party, the game. And so we're going to do a little, we're going to play a little game and see if we can get you the crown of, see if we can get you the title of Queen of House Party.
All right.
Okay, I'm all about the trivia. Let's go.
Are you? Are you about that house
trivia.
party, 90s hip hop trivia? Because this is where we're going right now. Let's see.
We'll see.
The lead roles played by Kid and Play in the classic 1990 comedy House Party were originally intended for which musical duo who turned the role down to star in a hit sitcom?
They started a hit sitcom. Musical duo.
Think about the
Ooh,
time.
I remember this.
Think about the time. Who else was big and bad musical duo? Who could have played Kid and Play?
Oh, I remember. Who was it? Oh, I remember it being I remember the news. I just don't remember who it was.
Steph, do you know this one?
Now this is a story all about how, is that them?
Oh my God.
Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince?
Was it those
two?
Okay.
It was those two.
I didn't even know that.
I never knew that.
I remember the news. And I'm not sure I would have gotten it, but once I saw it, I was like, well, obviously. Like once you hear the answer, it's kind of like.
I remember hearing that someone else was to play that originally.
They turned it down.
All right. I think everybody made a good decision. They both.
I do.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, let's focus up and get to the questions. Okay. First thing I want to talk to you about is your bio says that you were a Russian translator. How did you get there? Because there's some Black girl magic happening that I don't quite understand. There's a root and a loop, and I want you to walk us through it.
Okay, so at the risk of dating myself, which is okay, I was in high school at the time of the Cold War. So U.S. versus the then USSR, which is now Russia. Well, that was ending, and I believe Gorbachev came into power, I guess you would say. And so his government and the USSR and the U.S. Designed a program where they would start glasnost, where our countries would become friends, if you allow me to say, and they opened up their borders to the other country. So that caused Russian to be taught in some public high schools. I was learning French, and my mother just said, why don't you try something different? You can learn Russian, or you can learn French or Spanish at any school. Why don't you try Russian? We also offered Chinese, which was unusual. I'm from a small town. So I took Russian, and I did well in it. I won some competitions, won some state competitions, and then went on to college at Ohio State University. And I just took Russian to kind of, OH. I just took some, oh, you all know that, that's right. I took some courses just to help boost my GPA. And then I just realized that I really love culture. I love people. I love learning about language, music, and food of different places and ways of life, more so than I liked learning about science and drugs and chemistry. I was a pharmacy major. And so I switched over. And then once I graduated from the university, I was placed with an organization that helped Russian families immigrate. And so I just would go with those families and translate whatever they needed me to translate or interpret in everyday situations, such as enrolling their children in school, going to the grocery store. I even had clients that got arrested. They needed to know their Miranda rights. So that's how I got that position. And that's what I did with it. It was really cool.
And how long did you do that?
Just a few years. What happened was I had to switch into educate. Well, I switched into education because, as you know, when we get a new president, they have say so over how funds are directed. And so our department was closed because that funding was redirected to another department. So, yeah.
And in June of this year, you went on a big trip? Do I have those dates right?
Well, in June, I started traveling. So yes, that was the beginning of a big trip, but I've been traveling for the last 6 months.
Okay, so tell us about those travels. How did the idea to travel for 6 months come about?
Well, I've always liked travel. And so you mean how I started traveling and what gave me the idea to start this? Or
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So the end of 2018 or so, well, I had a great job, loved it. I liked what I was doing, made a decent amount of money, great amount of money. But I began to just say that, what am I doing? I'm working to make money to buy stuff. And there's got to be more to life than this. Don't get me wrong, I had a great time, but there's more. I'm looking for something else. So I began to soul search. And long story short, a few life events happened. We unexpectedly lost my father. And my father and I were very close. And so that just some of the conversations we had toward the end of his life that really caused me to say, what do I want to do? It made it very real to me that life is short because he was here and then gone. And so I began to reflect and say, that could happen to me. So what do I want to do with my life? And so I just began to make plans. And reflect. When I realized that I wanted to travel, see the world more, I love culture. Like I said, I love people and seeing other ways of life. I said, it's time. It's time to do that. So I don't do anything small. I don't try to, ladies. I try to put my heart into everything I do. And so I had traveled some at the beginning of 2019. You know how we take a vacation, take a few days, and it just wasn't enough. 10 days isn't enough. I want to see more. I didn't want to work for 6 months to take a 2-week vacation. Some people that works for wasn't working for me. So I just decided to leave my job and sell my things. And I decided first, I want to travel and I want to spend an extended amount of time. And then I began to break that down and see how could I do that? What did that mean with regard to my everyday life? And that's when I began to put into place a plan to do that.
What did your original plan look like? Was it originally, I'm going to go to one place, or am I going to see a bunch of places at once? What was your first idea?
So just from my previous travels, I knew that I was not interested in running all around for 3 days here, 3 days there. I'm a culture lover and I like to take my time and explore. So I decided I would spend a longer amount of time in places where I was really interested. So it started with me just making a list of all of the places I wanted to go. And I sorted that list into 2 columns where I like to spend a lot of time and where I could just do 2 to 5 days. And so that was the easy stuff. The more in-depth things had to do with, well, how much time should I be gone overall? What am I going to do am I going to keep my car? Am I going to keep my apartment or my home? What am I going to do with all this stuff? Do I want to pay for storage or do I want to get rid of it? Those types of things just begin to come along. And, as you're going through a process, you think of other things. So those kinds of things, they came after I said, this is what I want to do. I want to take a year. I was still grieving, actually. Yes. And I said, I need some time for that as well. And this will help me. And I don't know what I want to do with my life, but I know what I don't want to do. And so I need some time to figure out what it is to be and to figure out what it is I want to do. And that's where I started.
Yeah. So you were teaching and then you just waited for the school year to end. Basically, you were.
I did not wait for the school year to end.
Oh.
And that was one thing that I was very torn about, because teachers usually are rule followers. But I was actually outside of it wasn't too bad for me though, because I worked at a university. So I had transferred from K-12, and they are very much a business. So you don't have a contract with them like you have to wait until June or you're blackballed in the education community. They are just give us a notice, and you could give a 2-week notice and you're fine. So yeah, I looked into my options. I looked into taking a year, just everything they offered, and me leaving was the best option that fit for me.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So did they offer any type of sabbatical or extended leave?
They did offer an extended leave. It had to be approved by it. You had to go through a few steps, and it had to be approved by the president of the university. And there were some other things that just because of it just didn't fit what I wanted. So there were some other things that you had to, other situations and circumstances and things you had to agree to. Yeah. And so I just said, you know what, I may be halfway around the world. I may not come back. I don't know. I'm open. I'm scared, but I'm open to anything. I could go visit somewhere. I wanted the option to be able to go visit somewhere, fall in love, apply for employment, and just be able to stay there. Yes. So I just felt, for me, I needed to cut ties. I didn't want anything to fall back on. I really wanted to allow myself the opportunity for anything to happen, because that's what I prayed for.
And that's such a bold choice to make. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't do anything small. And I don't, when I make a decision to go big, trust me, it is big and it can be scary, but I've thought things through. I'm not an emotional decision maker either. And I'm not knocking that. But I do listen to my heart, but I also use my head as well. So that felt right for me.
So what did you do to alleviate your fears or to quiet them down? How were you able to still go even though you were afraid?
Okay. So good question, Stephanie. What I did with regard to the fear is I did it anyway. And that may sound simple, but in a nutshell, that's what I did. So as you just said, as you have said, a lot of people feel fear, and it overwhelms them and they're frozen. Mm-hmm. And so I did a number of things. I acknowledged the fear, what I was feeling. I'm reflective, as I said. I thought about why I felt that way. I asked myself, what are you afraid of? What will happen if you don't do this? And I weigh the pros and cons of, I could be afraid, not do it, keep my job and keep working and keep doing what I'm not liking, or I can go explore. So that was the first thing I did. Once I made the decision, then a second set of fears came. What if this doesn't work out? And so I'm a woman of faith. I'm not sure, I am. And so I just began to talk to God. I talked to myself. And then finally, I just spoke to the fear. We had a conversation. It was on me so heavy. One day I had errands to run, and I just shut the car door and I looked over to the passenger side, like fear was right there. And I said, listen, I got too much to do today. I've already decided that I'm doing this. I've already quit my job. I've already bought my ticket. I'm going. And so this is the last time we're having this conversation. I'm not entertaining you anymore. I'm going to see what's going to happen, and I'm going to be okay. Did I have it all worked out? Absolutely not. But once I addressed the fear, I did not have as intense a battle anymore. I won that battle, and it wasn't as intense as it was up until that point. Mm-hmm. It still comes every now and again, but I just remind myself that, I'm living in today. I'm doing the most I can today, the best I can with what I have, and I'll deal with tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much what I've done. And then also the last thing I've done is fear is such a powerful poison. It's a powerful tool and enemy. It can maximize the smallest little thing. And so sometimes when I step back, I'll acknowledge the fear, but I also acknowledge everything else. And when I do that, it just becomes so much smaller than the rest of what my situation says to me. I hope that's clear.
It is. I love that you're talking about acknowledging the fear. So much like today we're in like this fearless time. Everybody's like, be fearless, hashtag fearless, but that doesn't exist. And it's not fair.
No.
It makes people think that, well, since I feel fear, I'm not fearless, therefore I can't do this thing. But that's not how it works. Fear serves a purpose. It's there to keep you where you are.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it's just
absolutely.
saying, you already know what's here. Just stay here. You don't know what's out there. But if what you want is out there, then you have to talk to that fear. You have to say, one way or another through, you can do some self-talk or put fear in the passenger seat like you did and talk to it seriously and say to it, here's where I'm going. I don't know where you're going, but this is where I'm going.
Absolutely.
Now, did you have any specific fears that you can share? Like, was it a fear of running out of money or anything like that? Or was it just sort of like the fear of launching?
That's a good question. There were some specific fears. The more general one was just fear of the unknown, like you all were saying, and launching. I had a set job and I had a set salary. I was to the place where I had more money than month. So I didn't run out of money. I got to the place in my career where I had extra money. I could buy nice things. I could go places I wanted to go. And so to give that up and not give it in exchange for something else known, I was giving it for the unknown. And that was a little scary. No one I knew had ever done this. And so there was the concerns. I heard the concerns in my ear of family that love me. Who do you know over there? Where are you going? How do they treat us? What are you going to do? You're a woman. You're by yourself. So I heard that. The specific fears, that wasn't necessarily my fear, but it was spoken to me and I heard it and it became a small concern. My specific fears, honestly, I am a high achiever academically and different things like that. I hold myself to a high standard. I've been self-sufficient for about almost 30 years. And so it was just, what if I'm embarrassed? What if it doesn't work out? What if, I'm giving up this great job with good benefits for what? And so there was just some conditioning, I think, that was causing some fear. Because I did launch a company, I wrote a book. I had a set salary versus being an author. I had not been an entrepreneur. I just have not been operating in a business mind. So it was, how am I going to make ends? That came, how are you going to be sure you can make ends meet? That kind of thing came to me as well.
Okay. And what was the timing of going away and writing your book? Were you doing them sort of planning at the same time, or did you only start writing after you left work and you started traveling?
So I've always been writing, but I started writing this book at the end of 2018, this specific book. And I just couldn't seem to get it finished. And so at the beginning of I did some things. I hired a coach and he kind of helped me with some things and helped me focus. So at the beginning of 2019, around March or so, I finished the book and I did not, right at the beginning of April, didn't like it at all. And so I knew that just so happened, I wasn't able to put my full energy in it. That was another sign for me that I needed to leave my job, because what I was passionate about, I was spending all my energy at a job where I clocked in and clocked out. And then I had no energy to put into my passion, which I really desired to do. My heart was really to write my book.
Yes.
So once I quit the job, I left in April and I had already planned to go to Thailand. I left the beginning of April and I planned to go to Thailand mid-April. So I talked to my coach. I said, the book is finished. I read it. I don't like it. And he talked to me and he said, you know what? I think you need to start over. So after I threw a temper tantrum for about 2 days, I literally went to 2 years old in the floor crying. So after, between April 5th and April 18th, I said, I'm going to write this book. and Thailand's going to be my reward. And the second time I wrote the book from cover to cover in about 10 days.
Wow.
8 to 10 days. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
I believe it's say that again.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was asking what the book was about.
And what did you say, Stephanie?
I was going to say, I think that's what free time will do for you.
Yes. I was free from the burdens of dread and not wanting to go where I was going and not wanting to do what I was spending most of my day doing. My book, the title is Girl Talk, Truth Every Woman Wants to Know. And it's just that. It's the truth every one of us wants and needs to know and hear about where we derive our value from, how to view ourselves regardless of what we have, don't have, what we do, don't do, how our value is internal, and having an accurate value system or assessment of how we attain our value, or how we having the proper tools and system by which we assess our value is important. So it's about that. It's about knowing who you are, and knowing what defines you.
Now, you described yourself as a high achiever. So many women, especially Black women, have been, I think, taught to value like what we achieve and our accomplishments and our titles over our own selves, right? Over our own peace of mind, over our own actual desires, right? We have to go after the things, these status, I don't want to call them status symbols, but these external rewards instead of our own self, our own personal goals. So how did this being, so I feel like this, but I'm not a high achiever. Like I've always been, I'm just going to chill, So how does a person, so it's interesting to me to hear you, a high achiever, still have these same feelings that, your personal goals are more important and your inner value is more important than these external things. How did that happen?
Well, I will say that it has been a journey. And so I can't really tell you how it happened. I can just tell you some of the things I believe that affected my metamorphosis, if you'll allow me to call it that. Sure. I achieved all that stuff. I have several degrees. I make good money. And for me, good money doesn't mean it's necessarily loads of money. It means I live a nice quality of life. I can pay my bills, and I can do things that I enjoy to do. I can even help others if that's what I desire to do. So I was at a place where I could do that, and I did do that. I had achieved just about everything that I wanted. The only thing that I had not experienced yet that I desired was to be in a long-term committed relationship, to be in a romantic relationship. And that's where it started. There was a time in my life because I was early 20s and 30s, because I was going after degrees and a good career, I wasn't interested in marriage at the time, because I knew I would not be able to fully give what I felt I should give to a partnership. But everyone else in my life was telling me, you can't be happy. Don't you want a man to make you happy? It's impossible for you to be happy and you're by yourself. Why are you by yourself? Why aren't you married yet? I thought you'd be married by now. So that caused me to start thinking, what's wrong with me? That I am okay, because I really was okay. And so that's what started the internal journey. And just realizing if I was with a man, if I wasn't, if I had a degree, if I didn't, all the things that I own right now, home, cars, clothing, if all that stuff was gone tomorrow, I'm still who I am. It doesn't affect my value. So it started with the whole relationship thing, because as you said, many of us were taught to go after the degree, get this, get that. And many of us have put relationships aside, and being a mother. And now we're at the place where when you've waited too long, according to society, then they devalue you. What you hear messages of devaluation because you aren't a mother now, you aren't a wife now, or you aren't in a relationship. When whether you have it or not, your value is your value. And so that's really what I wrote the book for, was a message first to tell myself. Well, first I figured learned or realized the message myself. I internalized it. And I said, you know what? I need to say this to society because it doesn't say this about single women. We hear everything but.
Yes.
And then I thought the message is me answering back to society, and then me also sharing it with other women who need to hear it, who have never heard it. So that's where that came from.
Thank you for sharing about your book, Kenya. We're going to link that below. We're going to link her author page below, so you can find her book on Amazon. And her name is Kenya Ransey, Ransey. So if you're looking for it, if anything goes wrong, it's not Ramsey, it's Ransey with an N. You can find her all over Amazon.
And your book is called Girl Talk.
Girl Talk, Truth Every Woman Wants to Know.
Okay. Now, can you tell us more about your travels? And one of the things we're really interested in is how people go from idea to the planning stage to the execution, and then how that actually looks in the real world. So we talk to a lot of women, Stephanie and I talk to a lot of women who are in the dream phase, and you got out of a dream phase. And we talked a little bit about that. You got out of a dream phase, you got to the planning stage, you got to the execution. Now, what happened when you got to the execution phase? Was it everything you ever wanted it to be, or were there some hiccups along the way?
Okay, so there absolutely were hiccups. The beauty of having that time and really being self-aware is I knew that I wanted to do some travel on my own, but not all of it on my own, because there some things you get a different perspective, and in some ways having someone there or traveling with someone, some of it can be, I won't say more enjoyable, but enjoyable in a different way. So I wanted a combination of both. So that's how I started. I knew that I had never done this before. So my very first trip was with a group. And then I went on a trip that was Thailand. I went with a few people. I went for a shorter amount of time, I think 10 days. When I started in June, my first trip was for a month, because I was starting one of the places where I wanted to spend some time, and I didn't want it to just be 4 or 5 days. Mm-hmm. So one of the things I did, let me back up, is when I made that list and I sorted into 2 to 5 days and a longer time, I looked where they were geographically, because I knew it would be more fiscally responsible if I went to locations near each other instead of floating back and forth across the globe. Mm-hmm. So that was one thing I did. I started with, my first trip was going to be a month, and I went not actually with the group, but I met a group of people there, and we lived as a community. They had been traveling for some time, and so I got to kind of ask them questions and just listen to their experiences to learn certain things. So I traveled with there are a couple of companies out there where you can, if you work remotely, you can travel for a whole year. I didn't want to commit to a whole year with people I didn't know. Mm-hmm. So I found someone that would let me do that for a month. After 1 month, I was ready for some Kenya time, and I went to my next location, and I went for about 10 days. That was Korea. So my first place was Bali. And then from Bali, I went to Korea for about 10 days, and I went by myself and did the tourist thing, where I just hit a lot of hot spots and did some things that I wanted to do. And so I began to answer your question I think I'm answering your question. Am I answering?
You are.
Okay. And so I don't know if you wanted me to tell all of the locations I went.
We want all the information you're willing to share.
Okay. So let me say that overall, I just looked at places geographically, and then I thought, how long do I want to be there in terms of what am I looking for to see there? Do I really want to delve into the culture? That determined how long I would be there. And then sometimes I changed it along the way. So as far as hiccups, I did have a plan, but I was flexible in my plan because I had time. My travels this year were, I'll start with Thailand. I did go to Aruba, but Thailand, then I went to Bali, Korea, Spain, the Netherlands, Bahrain, and Oman. And so those were a combination of, like I said, some were longer and some were shorter, depending on what I wanted to do and the reason I was going. So for instance, I went to Korea. That was a hiccup on my end. I had planned to go to Vietnam. However, I misread some information about the visa that you have to apply for. And I bought my ticket. I thought I was all set. But when I went to leave Bali and go to Vietnam, I was told that I could not board the plane because I would not be able to enter the country. It would be a wasted ticket. So they were kind enough to say, we'll refund you your ticket, but you've got to buy somewhere else to go or find somewhere else to go. So it was a hiccup because finding somewhere to go at the last minute is a little more costly than had I planned and purchased a ticket ahead of time. But it was great. I chose Korea for a couple of reasons. My father fought in the war there, and I wanted to go learn more about that. So I chose there, and that was great. While I was in Korea, I knew I wanted to go to Europe. I know that I have some family. We have Spanish history, and so I love the language. And so because I spent a little bit more in Korea, I tried to find cost-effective ways to spend time in Spain. Yes. I saw some information that Stephanie put on YouTube, and I started looking at companies where I could barter my services in Spain. So I was in Spain for about 2 months, and I lived on the land of a teacher. Her family owns lots of land, and they have several homes on the land. They farm the land, but she also works as a teacher. And so I worked with her. She was looking for a native English speaker to help tutor her. She tutors students in English. And in exchange to work with her a few hours a day, I received lodging. I had my own apartment. And they live on a farm. They grow everything, and she cooks daily. And I had 3 home-cooked organic farm meals a day. Oh, wow. And that was some of the best living I've ever experienced.
That's wonderful. So, after this video, I'm gonna ask you for her contact information.
Listen, I was like, what tips were these, Stephanie? How did I miss this?
But this was a work exchange? Was this through Workaway?
It was a work exchange, and it was through HelpX.
HelpX, good.
And it was great because she does not work in a school. She is a certified teacher, but she, after school, these students come to her. And so she has all classes of 5 students, no more than 5 students in a class, which I love working in small group. And we just hit it off. And so I got to eat lunch with her family every day. I met her mother, her neighbors. They all would come together. They're a little community. That was one of the best experiences that I had. And so I went with the punches. Yes, I had hiccups. I had quite a few hiccups. Things I didn't know because I was a new traveler. And so, but that goes again back to fighting the fear, doing it anyway. Yes, in some ways it cost me money that I did not plan to spend on that, but I got to stay in Spain, and that cost was fine. It evened out. Better than evened out, because I had an experience that I will never forget. And it didn't cost me much to go to Spain for the length of time that I did. I hope that answered your question.
It does. Of the countries you named that you went to, what was the one that you were like, this was the most amazing? We talked about Spain, but were there any others where you were like, this experience, every Black woman needs this in their life? Like, was there one of those?
Gosh. Is there somewhere everyone should go? I believe yes. Now, my travel history is not at all, it's just in the beginning stages. But there is something very, that's really drawing me as far as the Middle East. I am actually going back next month. Because there I saw elements. Now, the countries that I went to were mostly Muslim. But I saw elements of, I just saw things that we don't see here. I saw unity despite diversity, because although they're highly Muslim, there's a large military influence over there. There's a large non-U.S. military. There's a large expat community that is not U.S., that is not our military, from places like India, countries in Africa, different faiths. And I just saw what the American dream actually realized. I saw that in the Middle East. And it's completely different. I know that if you've lived any amount of time, you know that what the media presents both to and about us being Western, the Western world, is not 100% true. But going over there was a completely eye-opening experience. It was very safe. I never worried about being attacked. I never worried about being harassed or bothered by police officials or anything like that just because they had nothing else to do. It was just very safe, very peaceful, very welcoming, very warm. And so I would say the Middle East is someplace that if you can, many of us would be quite surprised.
So are you specifically thinking of Bahrain and Oman, one of those over the other, or just generally all over? You think all over the Middle East would be a...
Well, there are some places where that's not the case. I've only been to Bahrain and Oman. And so I would definitely say those two because that's where I've been. And so that's all I'll speak on. I have talked to people who have been to other places, one being some of my family, but I'll speak to about those two. And I am going back to those two. And I know that many people go to Dubai, and I'm not knocking Dubai, but when I chose not to go there on purpose because I wanted a more authentic experience of what it's really like culturally, more history. I wanted, and the people. I wanted to be able to connect with people who are born there, who grew up there, who do everyday life there. And so that I feel I got from Bahrain and Oman, definitely.
Okay. Now, on the other end of the spectrum of the countries you traveled to, were there any places where you were like, hey girl, don't ever, it's like, don't waste your time, don't go there, learn from my lesson. It's not what you want in your life. Any of those countries that...
Well, I'm a culture lover, so I got something from everywhere. Honestly, I did. I will tell you that as far as, because my mindset is life-wise, I believe that you can go almost, well, again, I have limited travel, but everywhere I went, I would do for 3 to 5 days. There, but as far as I wouldn't do any more than that. There's nowhere that I would say don't come here. Not that I went in this round. No. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I think you were getting there. Were there places that you wouldn't want to spend more than 3 to 5 days?
Yes, absolutely. So Korea was nice. The people were nice. The people that did interact with me were kind. There was a small group. Most did not. I spent more than 5 days there solely because I went for a reason to learn about the history and culture that my dad had something to do with. Mm-hmm. But other than that, I would not, that was why I spent more than 5 days there. Amsterdam was beautiful. I had a great time there. 5-6 days was enough because I just didn't get a lot of that was enough for me. Okay. I love what they're doing with the city, but that gave me enough time to see what I needed to see.
Yeah. Okay. And you've spoken about your travel history a few times. Had you solo traveled before this round of adventure?
No, I had not. Wow. I had not.
It's a big step.
No. Well, I read this book called Girl Talk.
Was it a good book, girl? Was it a good book?
It was actually one of the best I've ever. No, seriously, I sat down and I read my book after I wrote it, and it convicted and changed something even in me. There were some things that I didn't know this, but I've been holding off. I won't do that until I can do it with a partner. Well, that's pretty big. I'm going to wait. That's something I want to experience with others. And so I just held off and I said, travel's one of them. What am I waiting for? You know, even with a friend, girlfriend who, me and my girl, if I'm going somewhere, I want to go with someone. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that anymore because I could never get married. And so if that day never comes or not be in a long-term relationship, am I going to not do things that I want to do because I can do them by myself, so why not? Mm-hmm. So that some of the things that I read, it really caused me to look at my life and say, what are things that you're holding off on and why? And if the reason is valid, then fine. But if it's no longer a valid enough reason, I need to get out there and do it. So this was my first time, and it's been a learning experience. Not at all an expert, but I'm excited. And the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Now, a lot of people have a fear of solo traveling. Did you have one? And if so, were there any steps you took to get over it, or did you just kind of jump out of a nest and fly on your way down?
Well, this is just my perspective. It depends on where you go. A lot of the fear, well, let me start here. Some of the fear has to do with being a woman in America and just what we experience here. That's a lot of it. I'm not saying that things don't happen in other places, because they absolutely do. But I did find that being a solo traveler, like if was in my taxi or if I caught public transportation, someone was always striking up a conversation. They were interested in why I was there, especially in places where I didn't look like the rest of them. They were wondering why I was there, and they were just interested. And it happened a lot when I would take the time, because everywhere I went, I took the time to learn a few basic phrases to speak to them in their language. A lot of places speak English, but everybody doesn't have to. If you're in Spain, to expect people to speak English, to me, it's just like, you're not in an English speaking country. So why would they? And so just like we have the choice to learn other languages or not, so do they. So I took it upon myself, because I wanted to see some of the culture, to learn some of the language. So when I would just learn to say hello, how are you, thank you, those things like that, people would ask me why I was there. And so they would tell me, they would offer information, make sure one place told me, try to be off the train by 9 o'clock or by dark. Most of them though said, oh, well, you'll be very safe. You don't have to worry. You can go out at night and you'll be fine. Gentlemen would tell me, elderly guys would kind of tell me, make sure your things are put away, just basic common sense things. So I did not have a lot of fear, but I also am a woman. And so I listen, I follow my intuition. Yeah. If I would go out and I feel like, no, I need to get back, I'd hop on the train and I'd get back to where I was supposed to be. You follow what I'm saying? I would use my common sense and listen to people, because people were helpful. They tell me areas to avoid and things like that. So, I would also ask.
And I think that a lot of people forget about when they're thinking about solo travel, they forget about group trips and they forget about like the remote program that you did. So was it worth it to kind of transition into solo travel by starting with the group trips and then into the remote program and then off on your own?
It did. It was helpful for me because the thing that the remote, I only spent 1 month with them, but the thing that I got from that is that you can design whatever type of life you want to live. The possibilities are endless, but if all I'm exposed to is going to a 9 to 5 every day, whether I like it or not, and getting a check, then I don't know what's out there. I met people who are I met a girl who she just took a trip on a whim, and she started traveling, and so she noticed she didn't have a dating life, and now she started a whole new business. She has a matchmaking service for digital nomads. Ooh. Just because, and it's blowing up. Just because she got out there and she was talking to people and just talking to different minds, they would ask her, what are you missing? What do you like about this? What don't you? And she started finding out people miss dating, they miss connecting. And so she met a need, and she's doing well. I don't think she's going back to a 9 to 5 anytime soon. Mm-hmm. But that was the thing that I got from that experience, was just connecting with different minds. It causes you to expand your thinking. It causes it increased my confidence to go after what I wanted even more. It quieted the voice of fear and doubt, and it raised the volume on my own voice, of the voice of my heart.
Now that you brought it up,
yes,
let's talk about dating.
Okay.
Now, since you decided to go on Kenya's Big Adventure to now, how long has that been?
It's been 6 months. I'm back in the U.S. now. I came home to for the holiday and to kind of see what I want to do for 2020.
Okay. Now, did you date at all for those 6 months while you were traveling?
I did. Nothing. Nothing real. I did some, intro dates, but I was moving around. So how serious could it be? But I met a gentleman from Africa in Spain, and it was really cool because we spoke in Spanish the entire time. So that was just like, but yeah, I dated him a little bit. It was cool. Okay. Let me start over. That's too much information for the recording.
Much information? Okay.
Yes. Wait,
it's too much.
It's too much information you don't want to give, or is it too much information because you don't think people want it?
I don't know. I just felt like you didn't ask me all that. Maybe I should. So
what I was going to ask you was,
this is what women ask us. Yeah.
Yes. What I was going to ask you was, where physically were you when you dated? As a follow-up question, if you didn't get to this, where were you when you dated, and where were the people you dated from? But you just told me an African man in Spain. So, girl, you answered my question before I asked it.
Okay.
But if you don't want that information on the video,
I just thought I felt like I was rambling. Okay. No,
you answered my question before I asked it. So that's exactly we're here. We got a mind meld going on, Kenya. We're good.
I need to turn my brain off and just talk to y'all.
Yes.
Okay.
No worries, no stress. It's just us.
Okay. So yeah.
Okay. So African man in Spain. Anybody else along the way?
No, I wouldn't consider those dates. I met some gentlemen, and I did, talk with them, maybe coffee or tea. But this gentleman, I would consider those dates, and it was very interesting. He works in Spain, so he spends a lot of time between Spain and Africa. I met quite a few people who I met people who weren't from there, and it was interesting to hear their stories. But no, I would say he's the one I dated. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. If you ended up back in the same place as him, would you date him again?
I would definitely reach out.
Okay. All right. I think so far this is our closest to a potential love connection that we've heard.
Our first success story.
So the stories haven't been that great. This is what we're calling a success.
I don't know if it would be a love connection, but I would say that it was successful, and it was quite different from my dating experience in the U.S. Okay. In the recent past, it was cool. Okay. It was real cool.
Can we talk about this phase in your life? Did you have a name for what you were calling this when you left? Was it a sabbatical, a gap year, a career break? Were you calling it anything?
No. I think I got gap year from you too, from what I read about from what you do and just this whole interview process. No, I had not called it anything. I just said I'm going to take some time off.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's all I said.
That was the beginning. Now let's talk about where you are now. Are you calling the future anything? What do you have planned? You said you came back home to think about 2020. Are you thinking about coming back to the US and working? Are you planning on going abroad and staying? Tell us a little bit more about where you are right now.
Okay. So where I am, what I desire. I do not wish to return to the U.S. at this time. Actually, I came home to spend some weeks with my mother because I plan to vacate the premises. I am open right now. I am open to, because I've done some freelance writing for a couple of global publications. That all came through travel, and one of the ladies I met at the remote thing, she is a global writer, and we had a connection. And so I've been writing for global articles on global magazines. But I am open to freelancing, continuing to do that. I'm looking at all of my possibilities. I'm looking at teaching for the Department of Defense because I could teach. We have schools around the world. I'm looking at some other teaching, and that would be actually teaching like in a K-12 setting or a university. I'm also looking at just teaching English, going somewhere and people need to learn English. So I'm not quite sure of anything except that I want to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
I'll say it that way. I'm ready. I'm ready to, like I said, there's a whole world out there. I can always come home. I've been here, you know, I've lived most of my life at home in the US. And so I would like to experience something else at this time.
Okay. So did you know when you originally left that you would be feeling the way you're feeling right now? Was this an expectation that you wouldn't want to come back, or did something change while you were traveling?
I knew it was a possibility, but I didn't think I felt like it was just back there because again, my father's passing hadn't been that long ago and our circle hasn't been broken. And so I just also know that my mother is here, and did I want to, you know, be so far from her? I wasn't sure. I was like, well, I don't know. You know, I don't know if I need to be closer. I don't know if what I would feel. I knew that it was a possibility, but now I'm saying that it's more than a possibility. It's what I'm working toward. It's my goal. You know what I mean? So that's where I am. That I don't plan on being here.
Okay. Can we talk about money really quickly? Had you saved up before you left, or were you sort of winging it? What was your plan financially?
Okay, so my plan kind of happened boom, 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 and money came boom, 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 boom. So I had a savings, I did. And then the money that I used, because I decided I was going to sell like 95% of my stuff. I sold all my house furnishings. I had 2 cars. I sold one. The other car, I was in a car accident. I was hit by a drunk driver in 2018. Oh. And the case got settled right before I started traveling. And so I came into some funds to take care of and alleviate some bills and things so I wouldn't have to worry about those. And I had some money left over from that. So that is what I used for my travel. In addition to things like HelpX, I bought books to see how to minimize my travel expense, how to do it. I look for bargains, but some stuff I'm gonna pay. I'm particular about where I lay my head. I'm particular about that type of thing. And so I need to be comfortable. So I will spend a little bit of money, but I begin to look at books and look for tips and resources on how to do things. And so I found some things like HelpX and Workaway and house sitters, things like that, to help extend my stays without breaking the bank.
Yeah. Okay.
So although I didn't have tens of thousands of dollars saved up, I know some people think that, you know, you have to have that. But I also know that, you know, we spend money on what we want to spend it on. So, and I'm not knocking anyone. I used to buy designer bags and I need that Louis, and, you know, I'm going out to eat all the time, and I don't eat bologna sandwiches either to try to go to travel. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. But I know that we spend money on what we prioritize. So although I didn't have, you know, $100,000 in the bank, I was wise about where I spent money. You know, I was selective. I'll say that. I was selective about where I spent my money.
That's smart. And you mentioned earlier that you felt like you were going to work to pay the bills, to go to work, to buy things, to pay the bills. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much cheaper life outside of the United States can be if you let it. Like, I know a lot of people go on vacation and ball out, but when you're living outside of the US, that's not usually your attitude, and things can be significantly cheaper. You don't need a $150 a night villa in Bali. You can get a $15 room, and you know your living expenses really go down compared to what they are in the US. So
absolutely, that's exactly what it was. I stayed in nice places, and I think in Bali it was about there were so many places $10-12 a night, you know, and it came with laundry service, or it came with breakfast in the morning. So yes, you absolutely. And that's why sometimes when you ask me questions or you ask me about where I like to stay, Well, it depends. Are we talking 3 to 5 days, or are we talking longer? Because my mindset is totally different if I'm going to be spending, a week, more than a week there. It's just different.
Okay. And do you have any advice for women who are afraid to take this leap?
Yes. If you are afraid to take this leap, my advice to you is to do it anyway. Do it afraid. Fear is going to come. That's natural. It will come. Anytime we're doing something new, there will be an element of fear. So as Stephanie said it so perfectly, fear is designed to keep us where we are. So if you want to, if you want to do something new or experience something different, there's going to be fear. That doesn't mean don't do it. Do it anyway. Do it afraid. You got it. Do it afraid. Because on the other side of fear are amazing opportunities and experiences of a lifetime. That's my advice.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your story with us. Where can people who want to follow you connect with you?
Okay. Well, thank you. Where you can follow me is, okay. Well, first I want to say thank you. You're welcome, and thank you for this opportunity. And those who are interested, you can follow me on Instagram at your.best.life. I am also on Facebook at Your Best Life with KR. And my website, KenyaRansey.com. That's where everything is listed. Any and every podcast, any blog, any and everything, all things they have to do, travel, anything you want, KenyaRansey.com.
Ransey.
Yes. N is in Nancy, not M is in
Nancy.
Yes, N is in Nancy.
So we promised you that we would give you some resources to help you get your Kenya life on to do what Kenya did. So we're going to give you, so here are the links to get that information from us.
Okay.
So I provide a resource called the Complete Gap Year Planning Checklist that will take you from the dream stage into the execution stage. And I will link to that below in the box.
In the chat window?
In the description. It's in the description.
In the description of the video.
Come on, Shida, get your YouTube lingo up.
Listen, I'm such a rookie.
And I have a quiz. If you're not sure if it's even something that's possible for you, if you want to know, could you possibly take a career break? I have a quiz. It's that link is also in the description, quiz.vicarious.com/gap year. It's a long link, but the link is in the description.